So, a new high school brawler webtoon has just come out, and it's pretty interesting. It's made by the same author of Lookism, and the best way to describe it is imagine if Lookism tried to be Weak Hero. Viral Hit borrows a lot from both series, but it combines elements in such a unique way that it manages to find its own identity separate from either webtoon, although there are plenty of similarities. The story centers on your average high school loser named Taejun Park. I mean, just look at him. Look at the way he's dressed. Only a loser would dress like that. He manages to get popular one day after he accidentally live streams himself fighting one of his bullies, and he decides to capitalize on his new fame by creating basically a YouTube channel where he would call out bullies and fight them with pretty unconventional fighting techniques. Now I'm sure you could just see the similarities already just based off the brief synopsis I gave, and rest assured there are a lot more, but Viral Hit still has a lot of original ideas that it pulls off mostly successfully. I love Haben as a main character. I'm glad he's not just Daniel Park again, and the new personality they wrote was pretty good. He was just a regular guy who became socially awkward and anxious after he got bullied and socially outcasted, but he's still brave enough and strong enough to stand up for himself and work really hard to get there. He's pretty smart too, not gray level per se, but above average. I also love how snarky he is. He got a laugh out of me a few times. Next is Snapper. When he was first introduced, I didn't think, I knew what they were going for, but I was like, I don't think they can make him work. I don't think I'll ever really like him after the things he's done. But, they proved me wrong. He turned out to be pretty okay. It helps that I like his relationship with Haben, and that's legitimately written well. He is a foil to him, but he's not exactly a rival, sidekick, or even really a friend, I'd say. He's kind of like a more dramatic take on Taejun, and I like that idea. Besides that, we also have Bomi and Moon Se-young. They kind of remind me of Zoe and Vasco from Lookism, and both those characters were my favorite in that series, so I'm all for it. We also have Yul Ga, and she's a pretty good straight woman for the boys whenever they do something stupid. So basically all the time. The writing in this webtoon is good, certainly better than early Lookism, and the dialogue is written really well between the characters, and it really gives insight into their personalities. The actual dynamic in the main group, though, is kind of weird. I mean, there is a common sense of ideals between them and a sense of camaraderie, but, they're all really selfish, which I guess for high schoolers is accurate. This webtoon is literally just a bunch of teenagers trying to get popular on the internet through drama, after all. But whenever there's, a serious, dramatic interaction between them, it's usually played off for laughs. So we got a larger emphasis on online streaming and content creation, which is a topic Lookism has tackled before, but I like the more streamlined focus of Viral Hit and how it looks at the more realistic and kind of mundane aspects of content creation. The art style is also really good. It has the same, what I describe as sort of like this pseudo-realistic, cel-shaded look that Lookism has, but this time every single character design is unique. I like Lookism's art design, I really do, but it's come to a point where everyone in Lookism looks exactly the same. All the guys in Lookism are jacked, tall, and handsome with short black hair, and all the girls are shorter, cuter, with longer black hair. If they have even remotely the same clothing, I have trouble telling them apart. There was a scene where Jake Kim and Samuel CEO were having a conversation, and there was, a bunch of guys around them, but, all the speech bubbles didn't say who was talking, and they were all wearing the same black suit with a tie and a white shirt, and their backs were turned like this. So it's I couldn't tell first of all who was talking and what each person was saying. It was hard to tell. I honestly thought for the longest time that they were new characters or something. It was really confusing. I thought the action scenes were better too. They were still, they still did that weird thing where, to show an impact of a punch, they'll, distort a person's arm, and, the person getting hit will, have a bunch of after images, reacting to the blow. But I thought that they made it pretty clear what was happening, and I think the fights were still emotionally and visually interesting, satisfying to watch, and just really well represented. The fighting style in this webtoon is sort of like a middle ground between Lookism and Weak Hero. There is a strong martial arts base, but it also has elements of outmaneuvering and outsmarting your opponent. either by playing to their weaknesses or constructing a scenario that gives you optimum chances of victory. I'm really enjoying Hobin's growth as a fighter. He has the battle sense and guts and the will to fight, he just lacked the inspiration and direction to do so. And I'm glad that he got it from a channel that essentially no one knows about, and I hope eventually he gives that channel a shout out and it blows up. Because in this world of the most like flashily edited and clickbaiting and shocking things are the most popular ways to get famous online, it's nice to know that like the best actual content out there is the ones with the most passion and meaning behind that. Hobin has 150,000 subscribers in his first 2 months. Back to the fighting. Usually these high school brawlers, they have the same method of progression where they sort of outline the major threats, and for some reason there's usually 4 of them. Hey guys, the 4 Awakened Associations are each influencing 4 gangs who are influencing 4 schools who all have 4 royals and all specialize in the 4 championship titles of boxing. We're gonna beat them up and that's gonna fix everything. It's not exactly the same, obviously, and they all give their own unique twist to the formula, but Viral Hit, at least for now, has a more straightforward approach where each new bully has their own unique story and personality. Just wait, there's gonna be like 4 drama YouTube channels that all just happen to specialize in a martial art, and Hobin's gonna have to defeat them. Alright, let's move on to the fun stuff. Can Hobin defeat Daniel Park? No. In his lesser body? Maybe. If it was his superior body and he went Ultra Instinct, there's nothing Hobin could do. Even if I gave him prep time like I did with Gray, I don't think he could really realistically do anything. And at least in his lesser body, it would be a more even fight, and even without a plan, he could block most of Daniel's hits and reasonably take him down with his training, even though he probably isn't as strong as him. Hobin is also faster and knows more about fighting techniques, so maybe he can choke Daniel out and defend himself from Daniel's more conventional boxing. Also, Hobin would have killed it on Quitch. Can Hobin defeat John? If John has an ability, then obviously not, but even without abilities, I don't think Hobin could defeat him. John has trained like without an ability for basically his entire life, and he's also very smart and knows a lot about fighting techniques. Like the experience gap between them is just too big. I don't even think Hobin can really outsmart John because John like doesn't really have that many weaknesses anyway. Can Hobin defeat Gray? That is a very interesting question because Hobin and Gray are like the perfect counters to each other. They both are pretty weak but have ways to compensate. Gray with his weapons and intelligence, Hobin with his unpredictable fighting techniques and knowledge of different fighting styles. Gray can adapt to any situation. Hobin can make any scenario that would give him the best chances for victory. I think Hobin is more creative while Gray is more practical when it comes to intelligence, at least. I honestly feel like it's really just a matter of who would have the better plan, and in that case, I mean, it's really anyone's game at that point. If it were just up to them with no plans, I think Gray would still have it just because like most of Hobin's techniques are used for defending against his opponents, but I don't think there's really anything he's learned that can counter Gray. And Gray I feel like he knows a lot about the way humans work and just the human body that like he could just bypass that anyway. And Hobin, his psychological tricks wouldn't work on Gray because I feel like he's too mentally secure. Hobin also can't telegraph his opponent's moves like Gray can, and with just how brutal Gray is, I think like Hobin would lose. Can Gray defeat John? Nope, unfortunately not. They're both equally brutal, but John just has way more experience fighting bullies. I do think Gray would stand a better chance than Hobin because I think he can come up with a better plan to go against John than Hobin can, but it would really have to like be mentally, like he would have to like really focus on John's mentality because that's really his one weakness. Like John just is not very mentally strong. Can John defeat Daniel? No. Even without Ultra Instinct, Daniel is just a way better fighter than John is because of how he's able to copy his opponent's moves and because he knows multiple martial arts. And even though Daniel has never fought against any kind of like superhuman beings like John has, there are some people in Lookism that are so absurdly powerful and strong that they might as well have abilities. However, None of these matchups matter because you, from the boxer, would absolutely destroy any of these guys. And yes, I do count the boxer as a high school brawler because the series started with you in high school, and he does have an oddly specific reason for why he's strong. It doesn't even matter if it was like a boxing match or a street brawl, you would just kill. And the only person who I think might have a chance is Daniel Park if he went Ultra Instinct. And even then, I seriously doubt he would. I doubt he would be able to beat you. Daniel Park may have broken Gun's arm, but Yu's arm is a gun. Just a comment on like Lookism's story real quick. Like, I actually don't mind the extra focus towards like gang violence rather than like high school stuff. Like most people, like a lot of people are, upset about that, and I get it. But like, for me, it was always like, even though it explores darker topics, Lookism has always been like the webtoon about like social commentary of like just people and human beings, and they still do that. It's just with, I guess, like a different focus this time. And I'm sure they will get back to high school eventually. My main gripe with Lookism's story is honestly that the narrative is so disorienting. That doesn't mean that Lookism's story is really complicated. No. The story itself isn't that complex, but just sort of like, there are so many moving parts in this story that it's so hard to keep track. And like the big deal arc is a prime example of this. We have flashbacks within flashbacks, and there are so many things to set up, like Jake, Samuel, whatever Gun and Goo are doing with James Lee. Suddenly, Ollie Wang and Johan appear to have cameos, and I guess that they had enough time in between like setting up their own gangs to like have a cameo and big deal. And it doesn't feel natural. And trust me guys, I'm a continuity nut. I love it when things all just connect and make sense with each other because it's so satisfying to see. And like, even if there's no plot holes with this and it was all planned out from the beginning, it just feels like a mess and it's hard to read. Like it's hard to like keep track of everything. And it's not like they do anything important. Like, there are 2 points in the story where Daniel Park pontificates about Ollie Wang and Goo Kim. 2 characters he's barely interacted with, and it was done to sort of reinforce the larger themes of the arc and sort of foreshadow like the larger plot ahead, but realistically, Daniel should not realize their significance or even really be thinking about them at all. Like, we know as the audience Ollie Wang and Goo Kim and like what their deal is, but Daniel doesn't, so why is this happening? Like, it's not a big deal by itself, but I feel like Lookism just needs to stop focusing on these unnecessary things and just focus on whatever is going on right now in the story. And I still think Lookism has the best story out of all of these webtoons. I honestly think there should be less action scenes, or if they have to occur because of plot reasons, just tone them down a bit, because the writing should be first priority. It's the individual battles that win the war. Also, I just want to say that when I called Daniel's like, I don't know, like when I called it Ultra Instinct in my previous video, even if somehow Gray still has the upper hand against Daniel, Daniel could always just go Ultra Instinct and like basically just kill him. I was joking. Next is my beloved weak hero, and by the time of this recording, the 2nd season is over, and I liked everything leading up to it. Gray, Rowan, Teddy, and Eugene versus the Daeon group plus Grape. It was a really good fight. A part of me is sad that we didn't really get to see Eugene and Teddy's fight play out fully, but I understand why it was done, and I actually like the direction it took. Usually when it comes to these group battles where everyone is sort of having their own one-on-one, it's usually just one group totally annihilating the other one. But here, after Gray and Rowan win their fights, the other group just sort of backs down because they realize they can't really win the situation, probably, even if they win their own. And so they surrender. I really think that's an interesting idea. It's a realistic take on the situation, and it illustrates how a person's mentality can affect the outcome of a battle. And the fight between Ben and Jake was awesome. I love how Ben sort of evolved as a fighter and as a person as the battle went on, and how everyone respected Ben so much, even Gray. It's kind of like when All Might fought All for One and all of Japan was watching. I also like the mental imagery they use to sort of symbolically represent the fight. They do it a lot, and I don't bring it up as often as I should, But these segments are really cool, and this fight showcased the best of that. Then we got to the end of the fight when the Naksung fam attacks, and this was lame, guys. It was so lame. At first I was really excited, like, yes, Alex is finally getting his chance to shine, against a fitting villain too. Throughout this arc, we've been seeing just how similar Yoon Jang and Jake's crew are, with the key difference that Jake, even if he has a strong bond with his friends, they're all still kind of terrible people. There's the obvious connection with Jake and Ben, but there's also the same correlation between Naksung Yu and Alex Go. Ben is undoubtedly the leader of Yoon Jang and the strongest fighter they have, but Alex has been shown to be way more sociable than Ben, and have more friends besides Gray and the usual friend group. Alex even sorta led his own gang back in middle school. Alex Go may have very well turned out the same as Naksung Yu if it weren't for his friendship with Ben and that fateful day where Alex got betrayed and Ben got obliterated. The reverse is true too. If Jake had treated Naksung as more of a friend or even as a comrade, maybe things could have been better. The fam also abandons Naksung after he gets knocked out by Jake, just like how Alex got betrayed by his friends when Jimmy Bay attacked them. So yeah, this would have been a really interesting fight with a lot of character depth, or at least a flashy fight featuring Alex for once. But no, that doesn't happen! Instead, what happens is that Alex surprise attacks Naksung, and then the rest of the fam just destroys him, and he has to be saved by a battle-damaged Gray, Gerard, and Teddy. And then Naksung wakes up, yells to the sky for some reason, and then smashes a piece of wood on a dazed Alex. And then Ben wakes up and has to save Alex again. How many times has Ben saved Alex in this series? The Naksung fam sucks. They were built up as this background threat hanging over the Ben and Jake fight, but they're pathetic. Even when they're introduced, our first impression was that the leader got slapped once and the other four just gave up with no resistance. First impression! I can forgive that maybe because it was a flashback, like maybe we were missing some sort of detail and it was just an abridged retelling. Then the next time we see them is a 5-on-1 with Teddy, so that doesn't really mean anything. And in the finale, they just lose to a bunch of injured and tired people. We don't even get to see Naksung's fighting style. And listen, I know Ben is strong and cares a lot about Alex, but the fact he was able to knock out 5 guys despite just waking up and receiving the second worst beating in his life is really pushing it. And as usual, Alex has done nothing. Is that why the Naksung fam is so pathetic and worthless? Because he's so similar to Alex? Come on, guys, we gave Rowan his own moment. Rowan! This is so lame as a season finale. Like, it honestly would have been better if Naksung knocked out Ben after the fight and then ending the season there on a cliffhanger. It would have been more dramatic and better for pacing, and in the next season we could have opened with an awesome fight between Alex and Naksung. Have the Yoon Jang gang struggling to fend off the rest of the fam with Dean and Uru-chan and Grape deciding to help out because the Naksung fam got out of line. Instead, we got the same Ben saves the day thing, even though it doesn't make sense this time. The season finale was okay. Miles is back, which is pretty interesting. Looks like he has his own gang now, which Jimmy is going to join. I found it funny how Jack nonchalantly says they might die, which totally comes out of left field and has never been a concern. The worst we've ever seen is hospitalization, but I never thought anyone was at risk of dying. Looks like Gerard and Kingsley have history, which is cool. I was wondering what Kingsley's role in all of this was, and that girl that likes Gray might finally do something. The last webtoon I want to talk about is The Boxer, because it is the most intriguing webtoon I've seen so far. Contrary to the title, this webtoon really isn't about boxing. I mean, it's the focal point of the series, but that's not really what it's about. It uses boxing as a reference point to explore these different characters and their motivations and their struggles. It's seeing their individual journeys unfold as they devote themselves to the sport and seeing how it influences them for better and for worse. The Boxer is like a character study anthology, which is why I like it so much. It's also fascinating to see how everyone's story affects Yu in his journey to find any sort of meaning in life. I think Yu is the personification of boxing. Like, if boxing was a person, it would be Yu. And I love how whenever someone fights Yu, their inner conflict is drawn out and they're forced to confront it. It's the climax of their emotional journey intertwined with the sport, and it makes each match so exciting, even if we all know that Yu is going to undoubtedly crush them in the end. I've never seen an action or even a sports story quite like The Boxer. I'm not sure if I would say it's my favorite webtoon of all time, but it gave me that kind of special experience that not many pieces of media can give, so I highly encourage you all to go read it. I know I kind of went off topic for this video, but I really wanted to talk about these webtoons, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Is there any other webtoon-related topics I could talk about? Have you guys seen that new Netflix version of Sweet Home?